The Media Project.
Oh, with me this afternoon here at SMG's Are We Here Yet podcast, I have my good friend, Andrew Fitch. Andrew is Community Engagement Manager for Lever. We're going to talk today a lot about the work that Lever's doing over in North Adams, Massachusetts, and about the decentralization of venture capital. As you know, if you're a regular listener to this podcast, this is one of our running themes here about all of the advantages to communities and to the innovation space by decentralizing the map. This morning, I was just reading an article from the UK, just listing out everything that's happening there in places like Sunderland. Since the first decentralizing fund was created in Oxford a couple years ago, but we're going to talk about it here in America and specifically in Western Mass. So, without further ado, Andrew, it's good to have you here.
It's great to be here, Scott Graves. Thanks for the invite.
So the decentralizing of the map, is this something that comes up for you guys that you're thinking about consciously, or what exactly does that look like for Lever in the work that you guys have done so far?
Yeah, sure. And so Lever's been in existence for over 10 years and has been running accelerator programs, short-term programs that we call challenges, where we've given over $1 million in non-dilutive funding to startups, mostly in the Berkshires and Western Mass. We do have more of a statewide entity as well, which I'll talk about, the Massachusetts Founders Network, in a moment. But Lever has, from its very beginning, been focused in North Adams very intentionally, to try to create an entrepreneurial ecosystem all across the state of Massachusetts. And, without necessarily calling it this, Scott, like decentralizing, because, as I'm sure most of us in Massachusetts know, a whole lot of the resources, especially in the startup ecosystem, are in Boston, Cambridge, Somerville, some of the surrounding area too, but those are the real hubs and they're right next to each other. And so, but what about the rest of the state? How do we bring those resources that those areas are very rich in? How do we bring that all across the state? How do we connect the entrepreneurs who are here to those resources there? And also, how do we bring some of those resources that are there out here? And so that's what Lever's been doing for all this time, and I'm happy to go in more depth.
And as I understand it, the measure I believe I saw on the website, no less, is since its founding, it's led to, I think, $30+ million in that's the measure of follow-on funding, or generally just further investment in teams. And of those teams, how much of that effort has remained in the region? Do you know? But part of the reason why we're interested in that is that it seems to me that if you're a municipality, if you're regional planning people, if you just if you're an innovation team that needs to do hiring, the having local liquidity events affect the local ecosystem is important to increasing the exponentially, I should say, increasing the value of property, of everything else that is important to the revitalization of a place like North Adams, right? A previously heavily industrialized section of Western Mass that had to reinvent itself after that first wave of 19th and early 20th century industrialization went away.
Yep, you got it. And it had reinvented itself too. We had a really major electronics manufacturer here, and some of the engineers from that electronics manufacturer, Sprague Electric, had worked, they'd been pulled into war efforts by the Fed. They'd been pulled into NASA initiatives, my understanding. This was actually a hub of innovation for many, many decades. And so the hope is, of course, to create that ecosystem again all over Western Mass, not just even North Adams.
Well, that's true too. Sprague was really a part of a second wave, wasn't it? That was the early 20th century, because I think it was originally textiles or something.
Yep. You got it.
Yeah. Interesting. Some full 82% of all venture capital up to this point has really happened. It's not just a Massachusetts issue, but basically Boston, New York, Austin, Texas, and the greater San Francisco area, right? So
Got it. And a bit of LA as well.
and a bit of LA. And so in other words, heavily centralized, almost extreme. So besides, I'm interested just sort of like, not just in the thesis, that sort of, that leads the activities of I keep saying lever, but it's lever, isn't it?
Yeah, you got it, lever.
Of lever. But also, like what are the other ways in your estimation that we can, or that you guys are already sort of, gaining better access to capital for people?
Yeah, sure. We do a lot of coaching, and I mentioned earlier too, like the different accelerator programs that we do. It's been my understanding from the very beginning. The idea was to get entrepreneurs, especially in Western Mass, to be investor ready. And so that's kind of like the whole part of the program, and then getting them ready for that kind of the last event where we do introduce them to investors. And so because I've been here a little bit less than a year, I've experienced now 2 of these different kind of challenge programs and the conclusion of them, and then the intentional handoff to wherever it is that those startup founders need to go, which is oftentimes seeking capital or helping them develop in other areas so that they can go and seek capital in the near future. And so I've seen this in a whole bunch of different ways. And some of these startup founders are across the state, but a lot of them are in Western Mass. And so, I've seen our executive director and our organization, all of our staff members, trying to connect them to the right investors for them. And because Lever's been in existence all this time, we have a pretty significant list of investors, all across the state, angel investors, venture capital firms. And so the idea is like just wherever these entrepreneurs are, we try to connect them where they are. And so there is an ecosystem already. I don't think it's nearly as widely known as, of course, the Boston area, but there is already an ecosystem like for venture capital in this region. And so like we actually just did an event back in July, an on-site event. We hosted it intentionally in Holyoke because that was kind of the hub for that region for venture capital, because it pulls from UMass Amherst and like the VCs that are kind of in that area. And it also pulls from further west, like Lever runs a small venture fund as well, like so kind of pulls us in. We basically gathered all the different venture capitalists in this region who invest heavily in this region, including, by the way, Mass Ventures, because they often invest out here as well. So the idea is to try to drum up enthusiasm and awareness, and to bring more investors out here as well as a result of it, and to better connect people to it.
Are you finding that teams that originate in your area really want to stay in the area? I mean, it's a desirable place to live, right? And that's the whole point of what we're trying to do is bring the resource packages to the region, so people have the option of saying, all right, I still get access to the capital, mentors, all the things that I'm going to need for an innovation-based company, but I don't necessarily want to just move to one of those 4 cities.
Absolutely. Totally. Yeah. And the hope is to keep it that way, and to even, to grow the Western Mass ecosystem, because, there are so many, I know already, Scott, but like there are so many real estate opportunities out here. Like it just depends on what kind of a company you're starting. If you have very large real estate needs, I mean, that's a really difficult thing to get started with in Metro Boston, of course. Right. But a whole lot of vacant or underutilized factory buildings out this way, let me tell you. So, we have seen, like in Holyoke, for example, I was just talking about Holyoke, we've seen, like a surge of companies moving from the Boston area to there, and either opening, a portion of their campus there, or relocating there, or partnering, or just like starting a company of their own in those spaces. And so the idea is, yes, the local entrepreneurs, we do want to help coach them and support them so that they can stay out here and they can contribute to these ecosystems, and then make them more attractive to other people who might want to move here. So, right. It's a kind of a multi-tiered strategy, but I mean, I think it's really important to focus on all of those things: the recruiting of existing companies, the encouragement for more startup founders to move out here, and supporting the existing founders so that they can stay here too and succeed here.
And you mentioned, space, industrial space, commercial space. Mm-hmm. What does the housing outlook look like where you are? Because you guys are really the neighboring part of the bioregion to where I am in central and southern Vermont, where I'm developing properties. We got a housing challenge, right? That's also happening. There's opportunity in that, but then there's also a challenge. So maybe you can describe that a little bit. Yeah,
100%. Like you said, opportunities and challenges. And so I mean, like there's a housing crunch out here. North Adams, something like 800 housing units behind where it should be. And so, that's a large number for
That is a large number. And the total population is what?
about 12,900, 12,700, somewhere right in that ballpark. And so, yeah, that there is a crunch, and it's all across the Berkshires, it's all across the state. In my experience, however, in my understanding of it, because I'm from the Boston area, I used to live in Boston. I used to live in other major metro areas as well. It is worse in Metro Boston, so think they're a little better. If you come from that area, you will open up Zillow and be shocked by the housing prices being so low. I mean,
right.
However, for people who grew up here, they would also be shocked by the housing prices opening Zillow in a very different way, by how quickly they have grown. So yeah, it's a tricky thing, but there is so much opportunity out here. I mean, there's definitely some new housing development. There is definitely a lot of existing housing that needs some refurbishment to kind of bring it up. There's a lot of opportunity. The state actually just passed some new legislation, which is going to strip some of the abilities of municipalities to restrict ADU development, accessory development. So I mean, there's so much opportunity coming up to increase that development so that we can help solve those problems. But yeah, just kind of quick synopsis. I mean, it is still tough out here, but I don't think it's as tough as Metro Boston. So I think this is one of the attracting factors to this region, is that you can buy a somewhat affordable home out here, and live the Berkshire dream.
And have an innovation-based business, professional class wages, be able to build something, right, of value, build some wealth. A little further out on the time scale, right? But what's interesting about your neck of the woods to me from an east-west axis standpoint is the fact that we've now I know every decade or so we talk about this in Massachusetts. Here I am saying we. I now live in Vermont, but 18 months ago I was one of these people. We've been talking every decade about this idea of we're going to have an east-west line running from Boston to Albany again, right? That's not just freight. It's going to be it's going to be passenger rail. It's going to have a great schedule.
Yep.
What are your thoughts about that? You guys obviously are going to benefit tremendously from that. You're already a part actively of the Albany Metro and Eastern Hudson Valley, MSA, and you get to benefit from the greater Bennington area too, and the rest of the Berkshires heading south. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but
I have so many thoughts on that. And thank you for covering all of that, by the way, and evangelizing North Adams for me, because I agree that it's in this great spot. And not just North Adams, by the way, Pittsfield too. I mean, there's so much opportunity in Pittsfield, which, by the way, folks, for those listening, is much larger than North Adams. I mean, it's still one of the smaller cities in the state, but it's not the smallest. It's 45,000 population, something like that.
Shout out to our friends at the Berkshire Innovation Center.
That's right.
Cool looking place, and there's a lot of good programming up in that neck of the woods.
Heck yeah. And that's a whole other conversation, by the way, because Berkshire Innovation Center, they're doing so many great things. They actually have a center in Pittsfield, and they've actually opened up a satellite location in MassMocha's campus. For those of you listening, again, MassMocha opened up in the old Sprague Electric building about 10 years after the electronics manufacturer closed, and it's the largest contemporary art institute in North America, to my understanding, is in these old factory buildings in town. And so that's got its own kind of creative ecosystem and some kind of startup activity over there too. But where we were going let's get back to trains.
Right.
I am so excited about the Northern Tier Rail Study, is I believe the title of it. So this has been ongoing for years. A Mass DOT Department of Transportation study was done and is still open for public comment, by the way. So I'm now turning this, by the way, into a promo for the rail. The idea is it would connect North Station in Boston to North Adams with a few stops along the way, several stops along the way. I believe it's 2 hours and 48 minutes, something like that. So that's right about the same time that it takes to drive. I mean, that is a game changer for this whole region. Mm-hmm. There are 5 or 6 different options that were presented as a part of the study. I've been attending these community listening sessions about it, by the way, which is why I know about this so much. One of the options continues it all the way to Albany or to Rensselaer, which I think is where the Albany train station is. But that would be a whole other kind of a game changer, because that would really connect North Adams and Boston by train to New York City from that direction as well, and to Albany. So it really opens up this whole region, which has largely been kind of left behind, especially in terms of transportation like this. That whole Route 2 corridor across the northern portion of Massachusetts, a whole lot of old factory cities there, which have been struggling ever since those factories closed. And this rail, I think, could really help make a difference there.
Don't I know it? I spent 18 years in one of those cities, just about an hour and a half east of you, waiting for the rail to come.
Yeah.
Because the city had built a multimodal transit station on the grounds of the former train station, only to watch it the following year after it was built be decommissioned. It's still decommissioned to this date. It's abandoned buses that get, MART buses that get parked there when they break down, because they decided, we're not going to run. MBTA had decided once again, it's just not profitable. Well, no, it's not, because your North Station trains heading west at the end of the workday are leaving. The last one is leaving at like 3:30 in the afternoon, right? So like, foregone conclusion. It's like, people, that's not the end of people's workday, So yeah, here. I mean, and so folks, remember, public comment. If you happen to be in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and you care about this rail line, let the Commonwealth know.
Yeah. As public comment is open until October 12th, and it's mass.gov/northern-tier-passenger-rail-study.
This is why you are the communications engagement manager.
Yeah, you got it. And also, I mean, like, as you know, I'm pretty plugged into North Adams too. And so I'm just shouting this from the rooftops as much as I can do.
Imagine a vibrant region that embraces innovative technology and systems, allowing individuals and businesses to grow and thrive within the natural and cultural lifestyle of Vermont. Imagine the Black River Innovation Campus. Our community includes business and technology programming, co-working and technology tools, and other exciting experiences that are quickly creating an outsized impact to our little corner of northern New England here in Springfield, Vermont. PC Mag rates Springfield, Vermont number 8 for the best work-from-home cities in the U.S. Join us in Vermont. Begin your journey at bricvt.org.
Well, and that also brings me to another point I wanted to make, which was, you've been out there yourself for what, just a year?
A little over 3 years.
Little over 3 years. Right?
Yeah. But I've been working at Lever for just shy of a year. Yes, I came out remote job.
Give us a bit of a profile of you so that a lot of your peers understand, like, hey, that's something for me to be out there too. You're highly engaged, not just with the organization that you work for. You've also put your money where your mouth is. You've invested in downtown property, which has everyone here at the podcast like particularly enamored with your work, because we like people who are developing on a small scale and doing it in downtowns. Like that's really important to us. So talk to us about it.
That's where it is. So right up until the pandemic lockdown, I was living on a sailboat in San Francisco Bay, and I had been working and living in San Francisco for about 10 years. On again, off again. I moved to New York City for a little while in there too, but 10 years total in San Francisco, and loved it out there. And like, as one does when they go out there, the tech industry kind of gobbles you up and says like, we're going to take you now and you're going to work for us now. And just like, okay. And I used to travel a lot for work internationally, like right up until the pandemic lockdown. I traveled to London from San Francisco 8 separate trips in 2019 alone. And so like my life was very different. And I was, I worked at a couple different coding schools out there, like coding boot camps, teaching people to become web developers. And I would be in community roles there too and working with them. One of them also had kind of a workspace and incubator-like environment for startups. So that's kind of how I got into this work especially. And because I was able to keep my remote job with the company that I was working for, the tech company in San Francisco, when I first moved out here, I was able to kind of explore the region. And I really just came upon North Adams by chance, because I was looking for a place to live for 1 month as I was kind of re-exploring the state of Massachusetts to move back to it. And North Adams came up, and I placed myself here. It was the right place, the right moment. June of 2021, everyone had been double vaccinated if they wanted to be. And most people around here did get vaccinated. So cases were dropping, the weather was getting better, people were starting to hang out. And I just saw this enormous opportunity in the tiniest city of the state to make an impact. And I had always wanted to buy and fix up an old home. I grew up in an antique home. So I did it. By the end of that month, I had been on my house that I'm still fixing up, by the way, but it's coming along nicely. And a couple months later, I also, because I really just wanted to dive back into Massachusetts fully and really, again, like make a difference in a city or a town in Massachusetts and just really make it my life and my adventure, as opposed to the global travel that I was doing previously. I just wanted to have these hyper local experiences, and I'm still living that. So I did buy a couple commercial properties that were vacant and partially abandoned. Like there are some apartments upstairs of these commercial units that have been gutted and left for dead for at least 30 years, maybe 40 years. So this underutilized property that's right on this prominent corner in North Adams of the Eagle and Main streets. And I just thought to myself, I mean, this is going to be hard, but I see this as a no-brainer. It might take a little while to get the whole project up and running, but I've already started with phase one, which is getting one of the commercial units up and running, which I'm hoping to be able to do in the next even just couple months to get that started. So things are moving along, and it is really exciting. And I've seen since I've been here, and I'm sorry I'm talking so much here right now.
No. We like this. That's good.
I've seen a transformation in the community and in this area. You know, I have seen businesses still close, of course, but more are opening right now than closing. Yeah. And more buildings are getting fixed up here than, from what I understand from people who have been here longer than I have, than has happened in a long time. You know, and so there's this opportunity, not just because of the rail, not just because we have this enormous infrastructure study going on right now, not just because our river and our flood chute system is being studied by the Armored Corps of Engineers for improvement, but also because some more people have moved to the area. And Mass MoCA has really intentionally spread out into the community more to engage the community and support the community. We have all these things going for us right now. So if we can just add in a little more of the startup ecosystem as well, I think we've really got this place made. And we've got more of a diverse economy because of it, which will provide us with strength for the long run.
And so what's missing? Who's missing, right? Like, what is it you need more of, or that you don't have yet? Whether it be on the venture capital side, or just with the tech population.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. So first of all, you left the state, Scott. So that's what we're missing.
Hey,
I'm just talking. You're right nearby.
I'm right. I was just going to say, and I'm also a big regional person. Okay. So it's only a matter of time before we start doing something in Berkshire County. And right now, Bennington has become a major focus for us, at least on the Vermont side of the border. And, it'll flow south,
Yep. Okay. So a couple things. And by the way, I'm putting on my North Adams hat right now. And I'm also still wearing my lever hat and like Massachusetts Founders Network hat, but I'm also wearing my hat. Like I've recently joined the board of the local chamber of commerce. So I'm just kind of speaking generally about all these things, about things that I think that we need in this area. So one, we do need to start some more housing development, because we do have an opportunity to, we could double our population, because our population used to be twice the size that it is right now. So we have so much opportunity in housing development, which also stimulates the economy, of course. Yeah. We also have more opportunity with our tourism industry, because we've got these cultural institutions. Great. We, I think, are way under-tapped and under-resourced in terms of leveraging our natural resources. We have some amazing trail systems which could be improved, I think, actually fairly lightly, to make it a real like ecotourism destination in addition to arts and culture destination. We do have a couple small ski areas, but we have some plans in the works due to a local organization for some pretty serious mountain biking trails through our hills here.
Oh, nice. Yeah, because I've always felt like that's an ideal area, for that. Let's not forget, you have the highest peak in the Commonwealth. Mount Greylock is sitting right there in the Taconic,
which is not small, folks. If you haven't been out here, check that out, because it's a real mountain. Driving up there is pretty extraordinary. And the sunset vistas, by the way, must be at least the second best in the state. I think the best is probably Provincetown, looking on the beach, looking west, because you see only a tiny sliver of land. But we're second best. So yeah, tourism, sure, some expansion there too. There are several colleges out here, some of which are right around North Adams. We've got Williams College, which is one of the most highly rated liberal arts colleges in the country, in the world, actually. And we have Mass College of Liberal Arts, Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts, MCLA, right in North Adams as well. Mm-hmm. And so I think, Lever, yes, but also other entities, including the schools themselves, if we can really tap into the entrepreneurial ecosystem within these colleges and help expand that and help more of them stay in this region, I think that's another huge opportunity. And then also back into the venture scene and investment and attracting more companies to come here or existing people to launch their startups here or just to launch startups in general. I think that's another huge opportunity. So all of these different areas, I think, really connect to make, again, a really robust economy out here.
The deal flow out of Lever seems to be pretty good. Is it mostly being driven by teams and intellectual property coming out of Williams College, or is it being, how are you sourcing opportunity?
Yes, deal flow does kind of come from the region. I believe that they've invested in some companies from Vermont even. And they have invested in several that are right around here, and they've coached many more that are right around this area. And I believe they've taken some deal flow also from Boston. And so deal flow, to my understanding, comes to them through word of mouth because Lever's been in existence out here for quite some time. Through the investor network that they have, because they've partnered with several different entities or collaborated with several different entities. For example, the Alchemy Fund in the Connecticut River Valley in Amber.
Chris Sims and Chris Bignell.
Yeah, these folks know each other and they collaborate and they give each other pointers and they try to bring each other in on deals, of course.
Is part of this why the Mass Founders Network is located in your neck of the woods, as opposed to, because usually traditionally, let's say in Massachusetts, these kind of agencies or bureaucracies end up having their central office somewhere far east of where you are. But so was that considered kind of a coup? And is that part of the where opportunities are being found?
There's definitely opportunity for deal flow from that. So yeah, let me talk a little bit about MFN, because Massachusetts Founders Network is kind of my primary gig within Lever. So I'm like the community engagement manager for the Massachusetts Founders Network. I help out with kind of everything at Lever because we are a fairly small team, but that's my main focus. And so MFN is really and MFN is about, I want to say it's a year to a year and a half old. It was in development for a little longer, but it really fully launched about last October. And so it's this network that is, by the way, sponsored by the state, because we're a nonprofit. We get grants from different state quasi-public agencies. So one of them, for example, Mass Tech Collaborative, really wanted to help tie all the entrepreneurs together across the state, like we were just talking about, Scott, and help bring those resources that are in Boston, Cambridge, Somerville, concentrated there, to everywhere, to wherever the entrepreneurs are. And so MFN is really meant to be that kind of a platform where all the resources are accessible on there, and founders across the whole state. And our membership, we have a membership model as well, which is free, by the way. It always will be. We're a nonprofit, is very intentionally cross-state collaborated. And so I do a ton of different engagement things to get them connected and get them connected to the right investors for them wherever they are, or the right resource for them wherever they are. And yes, of course, deal flow, I do make connections to several investors in this region fairly regularly for the entrepreneurs that I speak with. And it doesn't even matter where they are in the state, though they do have to be in Massachusetts to join MFN. It is really just for Massachusetts founders. But yes, I've connected several people to Jeffrey, our executive director, at least so he can coach them, but also, of course, so he can check them out and see if they might be of interest to his firm.
Yeah, to speak to that regionality too, I do know, though I know not the details, collaboration between funds here in Vermont, like Fresh Tracks, Karen Cross. There's been a direct sort of relationship there with Lever for quite some time, and they're one of the more mature and well-heeled venture capital funds here in Vermont, right?
Yeah.
Small.
What I've been told is that they really helped light the spark that is now Burlington, like the ecosystem in Burlington.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So just further examples of small but mighty sort of early adopters in venture capital that brought that kind of funding equity opportunity here to the rural parts of New England. Well, cool. So any last final thoughts about just wrapping up everything that we've talked about, and what you'd like the rest of our listeners to know about the region and about opportunities that they can find there?
Yeah, sure. Just that I really hope people come and check it out. And yeah, I'm not the only one who is here who wants to recruit all the good people that they know in the world to come here too, because it really is that special. I'm also really curious, Scott, about somehow breaking the culture that seemingly exists in the Boston area. And I say this, by the way, because I grew up in that area too. The culture of thinking that a 2.5-hour drive from Metro Boston is too long to drive.
Right.
Because that is absurd from somebody who lived in San Francisco for quite some time.
Hey, listen, and we got to tell people, right? Like, it's actual driving. There's virtually no traffic.
No traffic. Like, just about zero traffic. Yeah. Because Route 2, straight out from Boston is a beautiful drive. It must be one of the most scenic drives in the whole state. You're driving along these gorgeous rivers for most of the way. So, yeah, I'm really curious about cracking that nut as well, figuring out a way to just create more of a path from Boston. Obviously, a train will help enormously, but creating that cultural connection to Boston, just making sure people are always coming to the Berkshires, because they already go to the Cape, they already go to New Hampshire, the lakes in New Hampshire. They need to come out here too. Our state of Massachusetts, the region too, and I'm talking about Massachusetts right now, is so dynamic. I am obsessed with our state. Like, for its size, it is got to be one of the most dynamic states in the whole country in terms of we have out here, the cultural attractions we have all across the state, the super long coastline, Boston, Metro, Worcester, all of these things, Springfield. There's so much coolness and opportunity here. So I just really hope that everybody does come and check out this region, and ideally, like, consider investing in this region, consider building in this region, because it's not only, beneficial to do that, or like lucrative to do that, it's also really inspiring to be a part of this wave that we have out here.
It really is, isn't it? You know what's interesting? This is probably another podcast for another time, but you aptly described perspective is an interesting thing, right? I'm living for the first time in a north to south access environment, right? Whereas I lived, as you do now, right, in this east-west sort of axis, right? And that expresses itself in a whole bunch of different ways. When people talk about the history of the place, when people talk about where resources go or don't, where people think about traveling and stuff. And recently, because we're making investments both in Vermont and Massachusetts, recently had a conversation with somebody in Massachusetts who, when I was speaking about a certain part of Western Mass, and they were saying, all the way out there, like, what could possibly be all the way out there that you'd be interested in? And I'm like, well, you're thinking east to west, like, no offense, but people like you from Eastern Massachusetts do.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm thinking of it as somebody right now who lives along Route 7 in central Vermont and understands that our whole region of, what's in play for us is everything from about an hour south of Burlington, Vermont, all the way down to Connecticut, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, when you look at it in that from our measurable perspective, it's dead center in where there's tons of action. Oh, and by the way, this location happens to be 40 minutes from an international airport. It happens to have great rail access now, both freight and passenger. It might even, it lends itself to very light rail options if we could ever get that done. So, it's perspective, you know what I mean? And I like your ideas of, like, on top of everything else we've already talked about, like, helping people change entirely how they see themselves, because it's really about them seeing themselves, right? Them seeing this as a real option to live, work, come out and recreate, and raise a family, everything that people do, right?
That's right.
Andrew Fitch, it has been an absolute pleasure having you here.
Scott Graves, been a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for joining the show.
Of course. See you again soon, I hope.
SMG's Are We Here Yet podcast is a production of M the Media Project and SM Graves Associates. Learn more at smgravesassociates.com.